people come to me, never seeing a naturopathic doctor before, and kind of expect me really just to be kind of anti-conventional medicine, which is not what I went into naturopathic medicine feeling, right? I felt like naturopathic medicine, and I still tell people, naturopathic medicine is the best of both worlds.
Welcome back to the Missoula podcast.
Stephen Russett.
Brandon Smith. Good to see you, buddy.
Dude, great to be here.
Yeah, we got big news, exciting news, and an honor. We're coming up on episode 100 of the Missoula podcast.
Is that the sound effect that the DJ is always using? Something cool said.
Sounded like
Who wants to be?
It did.
Something like that.
We need your help, audience. We're going to do something a little different. We're not going to have an interview style for that. We want to take all of your questions. Any question is great. And you can email or text us at where, Brandon?
406-888-MSLA, 406-888-MSLA, or send us an email at mso@themissoulapodcast.com. Like Stephen said, we want to hear from you, Missoula. We want this episode to be what you want. Stephen and I have done our best for the last 100 episodes to make this about you, our community. And oftentimes people ask us questions, and we are going to flip the script for one episode and answer those questions. So text them in, email them in. We want to hear from you. And also, what do you want from episode 101 and beyond? Who do you want to see on the show? New ideas, new strategies, new rapid fire questions. We're excited for the future and couldn't do it without you, our amazing community, Missoula. So with that, let's flip the page here to this week's episode. Absolutely honored to have Payton Robertson here in studio. Payton, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Payton, let's start off with the softball. What brought you to Missoula, Montana?
Yeah. Well, I've lived in Montana my entire life, born and raised. I was actually born in Havre, Montana.
Blue Pony.
Yes, Blue Pony.
Ponies.
That's always a very fun icebreaker when you meet people. And then next door to the sugar beaters there in
Chinook sugar beaters.
Yeah.
Great mascot.
That might be the best mascot in Montana.
Yeah, I'm partial to Blue Ponies because I think
Where's the
that's
blue
great.
come from?
I believe the story is they use ponies in copper mines that used to be there, and
Okay.
they'd come out of the mines and they'd be dusted in blue.
Oh, makes
No idea if that's true.
great story. Let's roll with it.
I'm glad I knew the answer to that one, maybe. Yeah, so I grew up a little bit outside of town in between Havre and Chinook, so lots of open space, lots of wind, lots of cows. So it was a fun place to grow up.
What did your folks do growing up, and why were they in Havre of all places on the High Line?
Yeah, good question. I think most people are in Havre for a couple of the big businesses, either the railroad or the hospital. My family was the railroad. So my dad was a train master, so he was quite up there in the BNSF railway system. My stepdad, I should say. My biological father, who lives down the road in Chester, Montana, even smaller place, also worked at a grain elevator there. And my mom sold tickets for the Amtrak train, so all train related.
Wild.
Yeah.
Was that awesome as a kid? Because every little boy loves trains. Feeling like you were invested in trains.
I had all the Thomas the Tank Engine trains and all that stuff too, and free train rides for quite a bit of my life was pretty awesome. So
family vacations, Amtrak.
Amtrak, yeah, all the way from farthest I've ever gone was California, and that takes a long time on a train.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's a better way to travel than a train as long as you have time. But a lot of people don't have as much time these days. Yeah. So don't do the train too much anymore. Just it'd be great if we had one in Missoula, but not right now.
You got to go up to Whitefish.
You got to go to Whitefish. Yeah.
But,
beautiful train station there, but.
As a kid, like growing up, what was the dream? Did you see yourself going into the locomotive industry, or what were your hopes?
Absolutely not. No. I just, you hear everybody in the community complaining about their jobs, and it seemed like a lot of the railroaders complained even more than the average person. But I did grow up thinking, your big buckets of jobs were medicine, fireman, police officer, kind of the typical jobs you get exposed to as a kid. I was always interested in medicine. I don't know at what age, maybe like 16-ish, sometimes in the teenage years. And then as I got further into biology classes in high school, I was like very interested in it. But medicine was kind of my backup plan. I thought I wanted to be a professional soccer player before. So spent just as much time practicing that as I did studying. By the time I went to college, that was pretty much what I dedicated myself as, doing something in medicine, some sort of doctor. Still didn't know what, still didn't know which kind. So did lots of shadowing, thought I wanted to be and shadowing is kind of just following doctors around, right? I followed my own general practitioner. I followed a general surgeon, a couple cardiologists, pediatric cardiologist, even osteopathic doctors, kind of the whole gamut. Thought I wanted to be a cardiologist for a while and do heart surgeries. I had that seemed close to my heart because I had lots of family members with heart disease. My grandpa died of a heart attack when he was shoveling snow when I was in high school. And I actually had one grandparent I wasn't even able to meet because he died like 2 weeks before I was born of a heart attack.
Wow.
He was in his 50s, so he was quite young. So I never got to meet him, but now that I've gone through my whole medical training, it was obvious he was at risk of a heart attack. He was overweight. He owned a bar, so lots of alcohol. He was a smoker. Didn't follow up on his doctor's appointments. Like it wasn't a surprise now that I've learned. So I was very interested in the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And then I kind of learned through my shadowing that we're kind of catching things pretty late by the time you need a surgeon. There's a lot of opportunity missed. And that's when I thought, okay, I need to be on the front lines of medicine and be like a general family practice doctor, right? So that was kind of throughout my whole college training, what I was going for. Still didn't really know where I wanted to go, but knew the WAMI program in Seattle was kind of like the most affordable, top-notch school to get primary care training. So I was kind of gearing up through college until I stumbled upon naturopathic medicine.
Where did you go to undergrad?
Rocky Mountain College, Billings.
Okay.
Yeah. I got to walk on there to play soccer, which is one big
I was
reason.
going to ask you, soccer, like where did that take you? Like,
yeah.
I
Playing soccer in Havre is difficult because there's one season, it's club. You're lucky to scrounge up enough people to like get a team to play. Right. And it was even co-ed and all through middle school and high school. So we always had one or two girls on the team. We're playing other small places like Shelby, Lewistown are big rivals. But we'd also play at places like Missoula and get our butts kicked tremendously. They get to play all year round. So I felt quite proud that I was able to even get a walk-on opportunity at Rocky, which was fantastic. Great confidence booster because soccer became my sport after middle school. And I feel like soccer is where I got a lot of my confidence. It's where I met a lot of my friends. The confidence came because I could see the time I was putting into it and see the results of getting better. So I was quite proud of that. Loved the opportunity I got at Rocky. Couldn't keep myself healthy enough, was kind of having problems, and it wasn't worth it from then on.
What position did you play?
I played, in my club league, I played striker, so forward, the one scoring the goals. I was just good enough with my feet and faster than most, which made it an
nice.
Ideal position for me.
In college, where'd they have you?
In college, I did a little bit of everything. Didn't get a whole lot of actual playing time in the season, just for injuries and things like that. But definitely played in the middle is what I was being geared up to do. One of my most proudest moments was just going for tryouts, actually, and I'll never forget just being so nervous, playing with all these college players that a lot of them came from like England, Scotland, Ireland, like accents I've never heard before growing up in Havre, right? Playing against these people who've been playing their whole lives. I was playing so hard, I ripped off one of the other players' pennies that he was wearing. And I was playing as aggressive as possible. So I remember thinking when I was leaving, I was like, oh, there's no way I'm going to be able to be on this team. And then got the old email later that was like, oh yeah, you're welcome to come walk on. And I was so excited.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah.
I'm interested in Havre, obviously, being a small town in Montana. What do you believe was the influence that Havre has had on your life, just growing up in that environment and aspects that you see?
Yeah, it's definitely changed since I've moved away, right? Now that I can reflect on it. I think the thing I liked the most in retrospect is just kind of the freedom in the space. my parents let me ride my bike anywhere in town, like from a pretty young age. So you didn't really realize that privilege at the time. Because, like traffic's low, everything's reachable on a bike. And then once you get to drive, that just expands your horizons even more, right? There's just so much space. So I still appreciate that to this day. And I think, I plan on being in Missoula a long time, and it's a little bit more condensed. And I'm just wondering how I'm going to pass that on to my kid in a little more condensed space.
Okay. So you stumbled upon what you're passionate about today.
Yeah. Naturopathic medicine.
Naturopathic medicine. Tell us about that story.
Yeah.
And how that began.
As I mentioned, I was having trouble keeping like healthy in soccer, and it was like chronic shin splints. If you've ever had the pleasure of experiencing that, very painful shins. I was getting stress fractures in those bones actually, and kind of went the conventional medicine route looking for answers, and nothing was really helping. Did lots of physical therapy, nothing really stuck. And my mom actually stumbled upon this naturopathic doctor in Havre, who I went and saw, and it was a tremendously different experience seeing this doctor than any other doctor. He spent a lot of time with me, like I think it was like an hour the first time, just like hearing me out. And I felt really heard, which I didn't realize I didn't really experience in other visits, just because maybe the time was so short. And, he didn't have a nurse or anything. It was just him in his office. He did everything from, he brought you back. He took your blood pressure. Like he saw you the whole time. So I would kind of, it turns out he wasn't able to help me. We tried some herbs, we tried some things, and it didn't help me either.
Did you say just rub some dirt on it? You'll be fine?
No, he didn't. He didn't rub some dirt on it. I don't need to get into like everything that we tried, but it was all reasonable things, and it just didn't work. So I kind of like wrote it off, continued on in college. I was about 18, so I was just entering college, and I kind of forgot about it. And then when I was doing job shadowing, I kind of came back to it, and I reached out to that doctor and said, hey, like, are there other naturopaths around that I can go and shadow and see how it was? And that's when I learned that like, there's a huge broad world of how naturopathic doctors practice. Some of them are like the spectrum's so wide. Some of them do a lot of energetic based medicine, is what I would call it. And then some of them do very much the same thing that conventional doctors do. They're prescribing medications and doing primary care, essentially screening labs and things like that. So that's what really attracted me after I shadowed enough of these doctors, was you could really make it your own. And probably the most appealing part to me was their practice setup. They all shared that, they spent a lot more time with their patients, and that allowed them not to just talk about, what's your problem? What's your medication? Should we increase it, decrease it, or try a different one and then move on? There was time to talk about diet, lifestyle, nutrition, exercise, all that stuff. So that's what got me interested.
Yeah.
I still wasn't necessarily serious about going to naturopathic medical school. Still wasn't quite sure if it was legit or not.
And was this during your time at Rocky?
Yeah.
Yep.
This was during my time at Rocky. Yep. So I shadowed some doctors in Billings, as well as Whitefish, Bozeman, kind of all over Montana, Helena. And actually, I still ended up my first year applying to medical school, applied to just conventional medical schools. Yeah. So took the MCAT, studied 5 hours a day all summer for that stupid test. Such a long test. Did average on it, which I was super bummed about. Like, I've been a high achiever my whole life. Got an average score and was like pretty distraught about it, honestly, when you're used to like succeeding in most things, right? So I was kind of surprised by that. Still went through the process of applying to schools. I got one interview at the WAMI program, which is UW. Felt like it went like a good interview, and then just got the email that said, you're a really strong applicant, but we're picking others this year. Try again next year, right? So again, I got kind of the double whammy that year. So now I had a gap year I wasn't planning for. So during that gap year, I worked as an in-home caregiver. So kind of familiar with like CNA work, right? In a in-office setting, but I was in somebody's home just helping one person. And it was a job I had a couple days a week during school. So I already had it set up, but now I was just committed to full-time that year while exploring what I wanted to do, which was a great learning experience because I was helping out a pretty well-off ranch family, and like the one who started it. And he was a great character. Made the mistake of asking like how many cows you had the first day, and he's like, "Son, that's like asking how much money you have in your bank." So I was like, "Oh, great. I'm not coming. I'm not going to be able to come back here." But I ended up being their favorite assistant or helper. So I got to spend that whole year with them essentially. And seeing his decline was really impactful for what I wanted to do in medicine. I believe he had lots of chronic diseases. He had heart problems. He had problems with his lungs, kidneys. Towards the end, he was starting to get a little bit more confused, and cognitively, he wasn't as strong. And like seeing him decline over that about 2 years I was working with him was quite powerful for me. This is somebody who has the means for the best of medicine, right? And he just wasn't being helped. And it was because he had a heart attack. The thing that set it off was he had a heart attack like 5-10 years before I even met him. So it was just kind of the downstream effects of that. He ended up passing while I was working there, which was tremendously sad, but not surprising to everybody who knew him. But I think it was sometime after that I realized this is where I needed to be in medicine, was somewhere on the front lines, helping people prevent chronic disease. One stat is like chronic disease accounts for about 80% of deaths these days as we get older. Most of them are preventable. So that's a stat I later learned. And I felt like the best way I could work in medicine was to have the similar practice setup as a naturopathic physician. So then I started taking it seriously and started looking into schools. And then I did some interviews, and then I decided this is where I'm going to apply. I'm not even going to apply to conventional schools next time.
Let's jump into the rapid fire, and then we'll get back to a little bit of what you're doing now.
Yeah.
All right. First initial memory of Missoula, Montana.
Yeah. Second grade, I got convinced to leave Havre with my mom and my stepdad to go on vacation, which I don't think we'd ever left Montana before. And we went to the Oregon coast. That messed up my perfect attendance up until second grade, but it was totally worth it.
That high achiever right there. Perfect attendance.
Yeah, I know. I think there was tears involved if I remember what my mom told me, but my teacher convinced me to go. So road tripped and drove past it. But I think that was the first time I remember going through the pass, between like Lincoln and here. And I remember being like, wow, I didn't know Montana had this. I thought it was just flat.
Like, there's no wind.
Yeah. And then this like city essentially like comes out of nowhere. And I think we stopped and ate it. We would eat at the Cracker Barrel is kind of where we would learn to stop and eat on the way there. And that's the first time I remember Missoula. And then the first real big memory was probably just coming in middle school for soccer and being like, wow, these fields are beautiful. These people are really good at soccer. Like, why don't we live here?
Payton, what's your favorite coffee shop here in Missoula?
Honestly, it's the coffee on my counter that's right next to my couch. However, my wife and I do enjoy Loose Caboose.
What's your favorite restaurant?
Can I say Taglier sandwiches?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Taglieri.
So good. What do you get there? What's your go-to?
I get the Beach Boy. Yeah, I think
same. That's
ever since I landed on that one, I can't do anything else.
Can't shake it. That aioli.
Yes.
Like,
it is.
It's amazing.
It is. I think I heard you say you were going to drink it with the straw.
I
once,
did
maybe.
say that one time.
I remember
I've said that
because
a few times.
I resonated with that.
So good.
Yeah,
so good.
And that's a strong one too. Because being in Seattle for so many years, living there for school, like lots of great food there. I don't think a sandwich place has come close to Taglieri, honestly.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah,
phenomenal. What zip code do you live in?
801.
9801.
What is the weirdest thing about Missoula?
Yeah, I thought hard about this because I don't find anything too strange, but I'm going to say the parking. And the reason I say that is because I don't think I've ever had to pay for parking yet because I'm not landing in the hours you have to pay for parking, even in the parking garage, which is, I got a lot of parking tickets in Seattle because it's the first place ever I had to pay attention. So parking garages are expensive almost no matter what time of day you go. Right. Here, that's like free most of the time after hours. So I think that's weird in its own way, but I love it.
What do you love the most about Missoula?
The variety of things you can do all year round. You got skiing in the winter, and then you can do soccer recreationally all year round, which I love.
Is there a book that's made a bigger impact on your life?
Oh yeah, this was an easy one. Outlive: The Science and Art of Longevity by Dr. Peter Attia, and he's a medical doctor, so conventional medical doctor. I think it's a great 10,000 foot view of, if we want to prepare our health for getting older, which is inevitable, we're all getting older. It's a great way that it's a great book that anybody can read without a whole lot of jargon to figure out what you need to do to kind of increase your odds of having avoiding all those chronic diseases when you get older and having a good, mobile, and functional life.
Do you still play soccer?
Oh, yes, I do. At least once a week. I should say once a week at best.
Rec league, or just get a group of guys go out and play? Or
I
what?
call it rec, but I think my teammates and teams we play against, we pretty much think we're like professional.
So MLS, like the Missoula.
Oh,
league.
yeah. It's the Missoula League. Like it can get heated, and it's just competitive enough to be tremendously fun.
That's
and
awesome.
Yeah, there's always that risk of injury, I suppose, but we all like to think we're being careful.
So reading Outlive and this kind of right turn to more naturopathic medicine.
Yeah.
What is some of the biggest mistakes or common misconceptions that normies like Brandon and I don't know about what it means to be preventative and live longer?
Yeah, I could probably talk an hour about that, but I think the most common thing I see is that a lot of like people come to me, never seeing a naturopathic doctor before, and kind of expect me to be anti-medication, maybe even to be anti-vaccine, really just to be kind of anti-conventional medicine, really, which is not what I went into naturopathic medicine feeling, right? I felt like naturopathic medicine, and I still tell people naturopathic medicine is the best of both worlds, because we do get the conventional training, right? So we can prescribe medications, we can order lab works. We do get that extra training in the natural stuff. So traditional herbal medicine, nutrition, like a lot more education in nutrition than traditional medical schools. So it's a really broad tool belt. And I like to use all of those tools. I don't just stick to just the natural stuff. I don't just stick to conventional stuff. I really try to personalize it to each person. That's not the case for every naturopathic doctor. There are, as I said, some that are kind of maybe just do an energetic style of medicine. There's some that might just use herbs, and there's some that might never use conventional medicine at all, which I think is confusing for a lot of people because they are so different and have the same name.
Well, I think that, or it feels that in the world, for those of us not on your side of the desk, that it's almost polarizing. There's this debate between conventional and naturopath, and it creates this tension that I'm sure
absolutely
you deal with. Can you
constantly
talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I became kind of aware of this, obviously, through the path of assessing which school I wanted to go to. And that's part of how I chose the school that, because I got accepted to many of the schools, and there's not too many available in the US that are accredited and legitimate. But of the ones that I did, I feel like I went to the best one. Of course, I'm probably biased in saying that. But the big draw for them was they had a really good balance of conventional medicine and naturopathic medicine philosophies and treatments. So I went in with the expectation I'm getting the best of both worlds. I'm going to be able to prescribe medications when needed and manage those. I am going to get the training of traditional herbal medicine and things like that too. And that's, I went through the whole program and did that. And then I was kind of blindsided by the fact of, that's not what everybody else sees. Some people come to you and they expect like what I said, right? So there's a lot of education that kind of comes in place, and that's why I'm so happy I'm able to kind of talk to you guys to at least shed a little bit of light on that. So I think the best thing people can do when they're interested is just set up a free phone consult. Most of our naturopathic clinics offer that, just to ask these questions, like, what is your philosophy? What is your practice style? Like, those are all great questions.
This is almost another rapid fire question, but is there what's a common thing people consume on a daily basis that is just terrible for our health, that you just sit back from your personal experience and be like, why is that even a thing in society right now?
Soda pop. Yeah. They do have, zero sugar ones now, which is a step in the right direction. But I think it's the sugary drinks, right? Because they spike your blood sugar. They cause lots of problems long term, right? There's nowhere in nature you're getting that much sugar that quickly, right? In our bodies, like I love to think of our bodies from an evolutionary perspective, right? Like our bodies are essentially old machines from caveman era, right? So they're still operating on those. Nowhere in nature are you going to get 40 to 50 grams of sugar in a few seconds. And when it does, it's going to put in all those processes to really store that, because your body doesn't know when you're going to get that again.
So it sounds like sugar is the underlying issue, not the soda.
Yeah, there's, we can debate some of the research that even the carbonation is kind of messing with your gut microbiome and what kind of effects is that having there. There's certainly other unknowns.
Gut microbiome, so I'll just take your word for it.
There's certainly lots to worry about, but the sugar as well. We're very, very confident in that.
What do you drink? What's your drink of choice outside of water?
Outside of water, well, I do love black coffee, but if I drink too much of that, I'll get jittery.
Okay.
I do enjoy a carbonated drink. So I do like the flavored like LaCroix every once in a while. I do.
I was going to ask about that if I was good.
LaCroix, Topo Chico.
Limoncello only for this guy here, but
solid. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is maybe the biggest like light bulb moment for most people that come to see you that just clicks for them that they had no idea that they could be doing something better for their health?
I think intuitively people know what's good for their health, right? Like exercise, eating more fruits and vegetables, not smoking. Like I think people are pretty in tune with what is healthy. What I think the biggest shock for people is all the tools we have to really personalize like a preventative treatment plan to keep them healthy, or that, maybe their conventional doctor did some manual lab work and things are mildly out of range. And they're like, oh, exercise a little bit more, eat a little bit better. We'll check it again next year. And when I talk to them, I'm like, I don't want to wait to address these things. Yes, everything your doctor said was fine, but to tell the common convention is, get 150 to 300 minutes of exercise a week, right? Mm-hmm. But what does that mean? That could mean something drastically different to each and every one of us, depending on what our health goals are, right? If you, Steve, want to live hard and fast, until the age of 60 and be okay passing then maybe you don't care about those labs at all, right? If you want to live, into your 80s and be quite mobile and be free of all those chronic diseases, we might want to peek under the hood and be more attentive to those things a lot sooner, right? So
really it sounds like it's more like we all have the head knowledge.
Yep.
We all know eat vegetables, eat fruits,
yep.
avoid sugar,
yep.
but we don't.
Yep.
So it's more of a self-discipline issue than just head knowledge.
Maybe. I think it's also less self-discipline, as there's so much confusion when people are Googling what they should be doing. Mm-hmm. There's so many different camps of diets out there. I do not, even with all my training and research, I do not believe there is a one size fits all diet. So these people who really loud on the internet, I think are doing a little bit of a disservice, because not everybody's going to benefit from that diet, even though they're very good with their marketing and making it sound like everyone's going to benefit from the diet.
We should all be carnivore right now. That's what my algorithm's telling me.
Exactly. And that's not true. I don't think that is true at all. So knowing there isn't a one size fits all diet, it's about personalizing again. And that's different for each person, depending on, what their work schedule is, like how many kids they have to feed in the morning, right? There's so many variables. And that's why I love having a larger space in the visit to help dive into that. And like, what can we do? So, sorry, so you have a question.
Yeah, no, it feels like, and I think like one of the challenges I see with conventional medicine is the process. You schedule an appointment, you're several weeks out, you go in, you sit in the waiting room. It feels like for an eternity, you get called back and it's a 5-minute appointment and just you're in and out.
Yep.
Sounds like the way your office operates, the way you operate is very different than that. Walk us through what it looks like for, a first-time patient.
Absolutely.
They're curious.
Mm-hmm.
They call you. What can they expect in that first experience, that first appointment, that first conversation with you?
Yeah. Here's a scenario, because this is one of my favorite ones, is a 30 to 40-year-old male comes in because his wife says you need to go to the doctor.
Sounds like us. Wow.
Wow. Okay. This is
Yeah.
relevant.
Keep going.
They're relatively healthy. You know, they've gotten a checkup.
Check.
They've gotten a checkup here or there with their primary conventional doctor. Nothing has ever risen to the occasion of a problem, and they kind of see it's like a waste of time to go, right? But the wife wants them to go. They Google, they might find a naturopath, think that's interesting. They see me. So they're here. I give them the spiel of what naturopathic medicine is. They decide we want to do just kind of preventative screening. And then we go from there and go, okay, well, do we want to do more of just what insurance is willing to cover as far as preventive screening, which I think is okay in the minimum. I think we can do better. And they're like, ooh, how do we do better? I said, well, there's other tests that can catch things a lot earlier. Don't really have time to go into what all those might be,
Sure.
but they're simple blood tests. Most people pick that option, right? And so we get a little bit more of a nuanced view of some of the risk factors of like these most common chronic diseases, right? So like diabetes risks, cardiovascular disease risk, blood pressure, things like that. And then we have to decide like how aggressive do you want to be as far as preventing some of these more chronic things. And this is all assuming they don't have any current problems, right? Like they're not coming in with, blood pressure that's through the roof, something that needs to be addressed first, right? Got to do the standard of care, got to do that stuff first. So we get a good lab, we address anything that's on the labs or talk about if we want to do anything of that, whether it's supplemental, usually if they don't have any other problems. And then what I like to do is develop a good relationship if they truly want to do the preventative thing that I think we all should, and have a relationship where you're seeing your doctor maybe every 3 to 6 months. For some of that accountability piece, right? Because we're going to talk about what is exercise to you? What are some good goals for you? What is nutrition to you now? How and do we need to change it up at all? And how do we monitor that? Those are some of the real basic things that people would expect at a first visit if they don't have a current problem they're coming in specifically for.
So you mentioned earlier that you really enjoyed that first follow with that naturopath in Havre.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing from you is twofold. The more hands-on relationship building between the doctor and the patient.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And also you're trying to begin with the end in mind, where you're getting a grasp of what you want your life to look like.
Yep.
And then let's partner together to build out a plan.
Yep.
That's going to help you succeed. And I'll walk with you the whole way.
Absolutely.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep, absolutely. Because I think the standard right now is not aggressive enough for what a lot of people just expect for older age. A lot of us don't maybe think a ton about what we want our last 10 years or so to look like, which is what Dr. Attia in his book spends a lot of time talking about. And it was something I honestly didn't think much about until reading that book. So if you know where you want to be, right, then that helps us a lot in how to game plan to get there. Like if you want to be able to, pick up 50 pounds when you're 80, well, you can't be doing nothing now when you're 30 and 40, right? So it is a bit laborious to have to think through some of these things, but man, it's going to save you a lot of time with what we need to do as far as exercise and diet and treatments now, as opposed to getting confused by what's maybe out there on the internet where they're trying to appeal to everyone, right?
I got a hard question for you.
I'm ready.
What's the downside to naturopath?
The downside of naturopathic medicine. Yeah. Besides the just people not knowing enough about it, I think is the big one. Okay. The misconceptions that, here's one, I think, is a lot of people also think it's snake oil. Everyone familiar with that term?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So snake oil, meaning like we're given kind of foo-foo medicine that doesn't work. And certainly I think there are providers that probably do that. But in our training, we do learn the evidence-based medicine, meaning there are research behind a lot of the herbs. Granted, there are a lot of traditional thousands of years for some of these herbs too.
I was going to ask you, in college with your shins, did you put some tea tree oil on that?
No, I didn't get crazy with topical stuff, honestly. But there's lots and lots of research on a lot of these natural therapies. And granted, they're not as powerful of research as these big pharmaceutical companies can do, but big supplement company industry makes lots of money too. And they do studies. And so there are there are times and places for a lot of these herbs. And the important thing is you see someone who's wise enough to recommend, based on the research, what's the best tool?
Yeah.
And then how do we monitor that to make sure it's working? Because the worst thing you can do is try some of these natural therapies and it's either not the correct dose, or we're not taking it in the right way, or it's not sourced correctly. And we're neglecting something that actually could work.
Payton, my last question for you, and then I know Steven's got a couple here to wrap us up. Outside looking in, sounds like there's a lot of talk right now about insurance and legislation for covering more naturopath medicines. What's the current state of insurance working with you guys, and what's the future look like, or what are you hoping some changes?
Yeah, this is important. So right now, we do take insurance. There are some exceptions, like Medicare never covers naturopathic medicine because that's a federal program, and not every state recognizes naturopaths as doctors. So Montana is a state where we're licensed, so we are viewed as general practicing doctors. We can prescribe medications in the state, not the same for other states. In fact, that law just got updated, thank goodness, I think about 2 years ago now. So now we can prescribe pretty much anything a general practicing doctor can, which is great. Because before that, it was only things of a natural origin, which was very confusing. Mm-hmm. Like I could prescribe morphine, but I can't prescribe like a specific blood pressure medication, which made zero sense. So they updated that. So insurance, yeah, for a lot of people, it's the same copay that they go to their regular doctor, which is nice.
Which is great, because it'd feel like that almost buried entry is people can't afford a naturopath because their insurance doesn't cover it. So they go the alternative route.
Exactly. And there are a lot of naturopathic doctors that don't take insurance because there is a lot of headache that comes with insurance. Sure. And I've worked in clinics like that did that. And I did find that as a huge barrier, like to get people to come up and follow up, to keep them moving in the right direction was very hard without utilizing insurance.
They're trying to balance my health or the cost.
Yeah.
And they will give up their health because they can't afford it. So it makes sense.
Because I think that there's already a barrier to getting people to do preventative medicine because, humans aren't used to thinking about long-term satisfaction. It's kind of short-term, right? And certainly we all are attentive to our pocketbooks, and that's a huge barrier.
Are you happy the choice that you made for your career, and what would you have done differently?
Oh yeah. I've thought a lot about this. I think the even before starting, the biggest thing I was aware of is that right out of school and out of residency, naturopathic doctors on average make a whole lot less money than traditional doctors, right? So that was a big conversation I had with my now wife, because she was still with me going into this. And she, I told her about it, and thank goodness she was on board with it, and she stuck with me the whole way. So that is one thing, is like financially, it's not the most lucrative. It can be hard. But as far as what it's given me to do and the way I'm able to practice, 100% happy I did it. It has allowed me to really practice the best medicine I think we can.
Payton, thanks for coming to Missoula. Thanks for your impact on this community. Where can people find you if they want to check out a naturopath doctor?
I'm currently at Aralia Health, right next to Bernice's Bakery, which I think lots of people know where that's at. And we do offer discovery calls, which are 10-minute phone calls with us just to talk about, what the heck naturopathic medicine is and if we would be a good fit for them. And the other important thing is, it's not one or the other. It's not seeing a naturopath versus seeing a medical doctor. You can see both, and I encourage people to see both.
It's awesome. Thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for being here, Payton.
Thanks so much for having me.
What's up, Missoula? This is Nick Balla, producer of the Missoula podcast. We truly appreciate you hanging out with us as we dive into the stories that make our city special. If you could do us a quick favor and follow the show wherever you are listening, whether that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, maybe you're watching on YouTube, so hit that little subscribe button. It really helps us out. Head on over to www.themissoulapodcast.com for more information, and we'll see you next week.